Hello, faithful followers of 24 Authors in 12 Hours. We are over halfway through the day with our authors. This is super exciting. I am here with Declan James Mullen, who wrote the book Care. And this book was a page turner. We were talking about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, when I read this book, I was like obsessed with one of the characters. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and put the links into the chat, but as I do that, Declan, why don't you talk about what inspired you to write this book?
Oh, it's a bit of a crazy story. How I eventually wrote a dystopian sci-fi novel, but at the minute I'm a teacher. I'm living in Thailand. I teach in a British international school here in Thailand, but in a past life I was working as a care assistant in Derry, Northern Ireland. So throughout my university years, I worked in care homes and in the hospital. I moved to after graduating university in 3D design, and then I did a master's degree in business management. I moved to London, and I was working there in the design industry. So for various reasons, that didn't really work out, and I moved back to Ireland, and I was working uh, in various different roles in the care industry again, which led me to take up a position at the university in Belfast in student support. So while I was in that role, I was taking care of a student who was confined to a wheelchair and needed um, full time support for personal care and also with the studies. And myself and this young student, we had a very, I would say, entertaining relationship. You know that we're very different people, and I suppose we're that we lived in two different worlds, but when we were together, we had a really good relationship. So um, it was this was originally the inspiration for me to start writing a story. How that developed into a dystopian sci-fi novel, I'm not really sure. That was all part of the writing process. So, um, but you can tell as you read the book, you can tell that um, the main character, Scott, has been inspired by that uh, by my previous life working as a care provider. So
So, for readers, what I want you to know is I was obsessed with Scott. And I know this is a bit of a spoiler, but uh, Declan moves away from Scott. But what I will say is Scott comes back. So, have faith, keep reading. Don't be like me and get all frustrated. Keep reading. Scott's going to come back. The story is going to make sense. And when Scott comes back, you're going to be like, okay, I get it now. But I was like, totally like, where's Scott? Where's Scott? Like, I'm so obsessed with this kid. Like, what's going to happen to him? This poor wheelchair bound kid. But it's so well crafted. You get so invested in these characters. And then the backstory is amazing. So, is the backstory based on any of your personal experiences or reading, or how did you come up with this backstory?
well, it's like well, the setting itself is the United Kingdom. Most specifically, Ulsteria is Northern Ireland. In a dystopian future, so Ulsteria and the United Isles of Britannis and Hibernus is the United Kingdom. So I think the setting and the story itself, most elements of it are inspired by growing up in Northern Ireland and the social and geopolitical landscape of the 1990s and the 2000s, kind of moving through the end of what was the the aftermath of kind of like a civil war, the troubles in Northern Ireland, and I think that probably inspired the rebellion theme. Um, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the history of Northern Ireland, but um, you know that definitely inspired the theme of the novel. Um,
Well, I think it's important because people who are older definitely remember Northern Ireland, right, and things that happened there. But I think especially it's kind of a history commentary because as younger people are coming in, they're not going to know this history, and so it's a unique way to kind of capture it.
yeah, I thought like I wanted to. I think when I was writing it, I just wanted to capture that kind of you know the oppression and rebellion, two sides of the coin, and how it can be uh, how the lines can be blurred um, somewhat in between, and also I really when I'm reading actually I'm not a big dystopian sci-fi dystopian reader, but I love movies like dystopian movies like Children of Men, um, and I love watching a movie that it almost feels like it's a possibility, it's a real possibility that this could happen in the future. So that was in my mind as I was writing, was like, how can I maintain this link to like current events, like um, how can I make this like relevant to experiences people are having today? And I think that's where the whole Discordia pandemic came into it, because obviously we have COVID-19, and then um, I think I kind of rolled on from that into uh, what would be a second pandemic, and then which kind of rolled into the new world. I don't want to give too much away for for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but yeah, that was the inspirations behind a lot of the themes.
Yeah, I'm always cautious on not doing spoilers, but one thing I thought that was done well in your book is if you look at kind of what's going on now with like Neuralink, right? And taking a disabled person and then being able to enable them that they can use their mind to then play games and stuff, right? Like you think of that and like, oh, like we can use technology to help people who are disabled. And you're like, this is a good thing. But then it's like you take this and then in this future where you're like, ooh, is this a good thing anymore? Have we crossed the lines? Is this ability for technology to help us become an ability for technology to then subsume mankind, which I think is a very common theme in dystopian fiction.
Yeah, oh for sure. And you know everything kind of really happened organically. These ideas were not pre-planned. It was almost like as I was writing, things were kind of linking together. Sometimes like very broad links, from the beginning of the story to the end. But uh, the the idea of having the enhancements, the cybernetic enhancements, um, that came along throughout the writing process. But I think it was like you say, with the Neuralink and every all these other like rumored developments in AI technology. I think it was relevant, and I don't think I went too far fetched. Like I feel like these like um, one of my old colleagues, as he was reading the book, that was one of the things he asked me before he got to that point in the book. He said, "Well, why doesn't Scott use his power and influence in this futuristic world to, to uh, kind of cure himself of his disabilities through technology?" And I was like, "Well, just keep reading." So maybe it's something that is an obvious theme, but I thought it ties in well with that theme of technology innovations and the limitations of the human body.
Yeah, I think super important. And I want to feature one of the authors that we talked to earlier today, which is Emily Wagner, who wrote a book called Go Back. And she talks about, in her book, it's this dystopian future where they're trying to take tech away from people and they're doing tech detox centers. And so, you go to your book, which is this dystopian fiction where it's kind of gone too far and, the whole androids kind of running the world, So how do we as humans get it right? How do we go into a world where we respect the technology, but we don't let the technology take over and destroy us, which, is such a common theme in dystopian fantasy.
Oh, it's even in the microcosm of the school, you see that every day working at a school where they want to encourage the children to embrace technology, but they also want to discourage the overuse of technology, but not inhibit innovation. So I actually do. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard of forest school. So forest schools, like getting the children outside and learning core skills, like cutting wood, lighting fires, building huts, and I feel like that's almost like the opposite side of the coin. No, we're not using the technology at all. So I think having initiatives where you're encouraging people to to take a break from technology, you know, maybe maybe you could find a sweet spot there in the future where yeah, kind of have a 50-50. But
No,
it's
I
not.
think that's important is that whole like getting grounded in the earth. We don't call it necessarily the same thing, but one of the things that's really come back a lot is in certain areas of the U.S. is like community gardens or having gardening in schools where kids learn to grow things.
Yeah,
I always joke and say I don't have to be a prepper. Like I know kids who just don't even know that potatoes are part of the plant that you can go and dig out. So I'm
yeah,
good. My potato plants will never be decimated because they don't even know like what a carrot looks like, right?
yeah. Well, I think as I grew up. I grew up pretty immersed in technology, and I always embraced it. I was always um, I was always someone who was like, kind of excited to try the next thing, like understand how it works, how can I use it. But as I get older, I realize the importance of these you know these core skills. Like you said, like like growing your potatoes. Like my grandma, she had her small plot in her garden, and I'm 35 years old. I don't think I could do that right now, but that's something that I think that could be um, like what I was talking about. That could be something that we could initiate that would kind of counteract the technology use. Start teaching children, these what it means to be a human, really. How to grow your own food, how to self-sustain. So I think forest school kind of taps into that a little bit, um, but I think yeah, a lot more could be done.
Yeah, I think that's an important concept. I'm going to switch now and pivot a bit to you. You are an author, and indie authors like we go on a journey. Like you write the book, and I think most authors, at least especially when I first started publishing, I was like, okay, writing the book, yay, I did this, and then you've got to edit the book. Editing the book is like the worst, in my opinion. And then after the editing book, you got to publish the book, and then once you publish the book, you've got to market the book. How has this journey worked for you, and what has been your trials and tribulations?
Well, apart from academic writing, I'd never written anything before, um, uh, like for personal pleasure or hobby. But I think really after my daughter was born, I found myself having a lot more time in the evening because I was just exhausted and no time to go out. And like when before I had my daughter, I would have maybe went out for a few beers, went to the gym, something. But now I was just coming home, and I thought, maybe I'll just start writing this story that I had um, I had planned to for a long time. The story about my time working as a carer, and really the whole process kind of just snowballed from there. I just started dedicating more and more time to it. But I would say the first part of it, where I was writing and writing and writing and writing, I was only looking towards the end of the book, or the end of the story, which was probably around like 1.5 years. I was working on that. As soon as I finished, I realized that, right, this is not the end. This is like, I've got a lot more to do. If I want to actually publish this book. So just even the research, trying to do everything yourself, that was something that I kind of had to do, because I didn't know any other way, and but I was fairly motivated to try my best to do everything myself. I have a background in um, uh, graphic design, 3D design, illustration, and animation. So I wanted to kind of use those skills also. So I did the book cover, I did the, and then I did the formatting and the editing myself. But I did get the beta reader and the proofreader uh, towards the end, before I published. But the marketing, that was super difficult and time consuming. Um, Although I was very determined to do these things on my own. A lot of it I don't really enjoy. The writing I enjoyed, but I suppose maybe the marketing not so much. Um, but no, one very positive aspect of it is, like, you learn so much. You learn so much about the process of writing and publishing, just by doing it. Instead of researching and researching and researching, just do it, kind of like trial and error. Trial and error, and eventually you get there. And even now, I'm thinking about doing a new issue of the book. It's something I'm considering for probably before the end of this year, because I got a lot of feedback with people saying, "Oh, you could do a graphic novel. Oh, you could do a graphic novel." But I like the idea of like a hybrid graphic novel. So that's kind of motivated me a bit to get back and do it again. Uh, I know it's maybe crazy of me to even to even step back and do it again, but
Now, a lot of times, what authors say is the key is you keep writing. It's almost like an addiction. We've had some writers on today who have over 50 published books, which is a lot, and
yeah,
and so there's definitely that. We all have stories that we want to share, and I apologize. I don't know if anybody just heard that, but when I scheduled this, things that I did not think to look on the calendar for was that, oh, they're going to have an air show today. And so that was a jet just flying over my house. And I was like, this is not normal. I do not normally live in a space where there's jets. But so if anybody's
awesome.
hearing that background noise, I apologize. I've got the noise reducing, but it was just a really loud jet. I think it's amazing what you've done. And I do think, keep producing. What I am going to ask, and I had a lot of thoughts about this book when I walked away, because it really speaks to so many things. Like, you definitely can feel from the book your compassion and your understanding for people with disabilities. Like, Scott is such a multidimensional character. He's not somebody you wrote where you're like, I'm going to have the disability. You wrote him as such a well-rounded character. What do you want readers to take away when they read this book, when they read Care?
Um, I think really, I just wanted you know, maybe to see the empowerment of Scott, and also the empowerment of Clodagh, and to kind of be um, maybe entertained by the twists and the outcome of the story, but really on with the characters themselves, maybe just to yeah, the empowerment of the character. Through the disability, he still has this drive to find the truth and to follow what he thinks is right, and go against everything that he knows, his family, the institutions that surround him, the societies that surround him, and to really search for what he thinks is right, and obviously that leads him to kind of, what would you say, evolve without giving away too much of the story. Yeah.
Well, I think in dystopian fiction, and I'll generalize it for you, is there's such a common theme of people being taught dogma, which you see Scott being taught this dogma and just ingrained in this dogma of belief. But then when he opens his eyes and he sees reality, he's like, this is a common theme, is, I don't think it's a spoiler, is you see these people who are like, society is wonderful, everything is great, like, for instance, the Hunger Games in the Capitol, right? But then when you got these hunter regions, people are starving, people are poaching these animals, not because they want to, but because they're hungry, right? Like, all these terrible things are going on. And so I think that that's a very, very common theme, is this kind of like the capital, the elite have this dogma, and they're saying, don't look left and don't look right. But when you have that well-rounded character like a Scott, they can see this and say, you're saying this, but the reality is something different.
Yeah. Well, I think that was inspired by like many things that again, I noticed, I suppose, in my own life, especially growing up in Northern Ireland. Like, say, if you're not familiar with the politics there, you would have the Irish and the British, the Catholic and the Protestant, the loyalist and the nationalist, so you definitely got elements of that as I was growing up, where you would have almost like people of one side or the other would have no idea of what, I suppose, the other side, what their lives are like, what they're going through, how it's like you're in your own little bubble with your community and your your politicians and your really not really seeing much outside of your small city or town. And then I suppose, like, I spent a lot of time in my 20s traveling and kind of seeing versions of that throughout the world, where people are just living their life in their own little bubble, and and it's like it's hard to kind of see past what's displayed around you. So I thought, like, I tried to make it as realistic as possible. I didn't want it to be that Scott was naive, but I thought, like, it's perfectly reasonable to suggest that he would not have really tried to venture out past what he knows, or what he's being told, because in that kind of situation, you trust your family, you trust your friends, you trust your elders, so you don't question when you're a young boy or a young girl, a teenager. So yeah, that's what I tried to encapsulate with Scott.
Declan, you did some wonderful world building. I appreciate you being here on 24 Authors in 12 Hours. I want to just promote to the audience that this is an author helping author event. So if you want to donate, we do have a donation link, as well as we have merchandise now. So if you want to get a coffee mug, if you want to get a water bottle, some people have been saying we need to get wine glasses, so I'm going to add that to the merchandise later on and make some of that up. So definitely do that. And then I also wrote, my latest book is in the genre of dystopian fiction. It is free today on Kindle Unlimited for anybody who, not Kindle Unlimited, but regular Kindle as well as Kindle Unlimited all the time. So please take a look at that book, download it, enjoy it, write a review. And I'm just going to shamelessly say this for both Declan and myself. The number one thing you can do for an author is write a review. Like, what should you get an author for Christmas? A review for us. Like, that's what we want for Christmas. So write reviews for your favorite authors. We have to wrap up for our next author. Is there any closing comments that you want to make?
No, I think I hope if any of you read my book, I hope you enjoy it. And one last thing is that in uh, from the start of September, I am going to be uh, making my ebook permanently free, like free download on Kindle, and I will also be reducing the price of the hardcover and paperback version of the book. So that will be start of September, and then hopefully by the end of the year, you might see another issue of Care with a bit of an illustrated twist.
The
So
graphic novel approach. I love it. Thank you so
so
much for your time. And we're going to wrap up and get to our next author. Thank you so much again.
okay, thank you very much, and good night.
And go get some sleep.
Alrighty, thanks very much, Amy. It was